Duran Redwood has been sentenced to life in prison for fatally beating his girlfriend Celeste Yawney to death. A jury found him guilty of second-degree murder last month. Redwood will not be eligible for parole for 15 years. The murder happened nearly 4 years ago when Redwood beat Yawney to death in her own home. She was left to die in her own bathtub.
I think time does heal a little bit, and the end of this trial heals, but I also, in some ways, I fear that it also makes you forget. And I feel like even though grief is hard and going through this is hard, it keeps Celeste's name alive and keeps her out there, because the main thing for me is I just never want her to be forgotten.
I think it's not really what we would call closure. We will always mourn Celeste, but our hope is, as I've said before, is that people will educate themselves to be able to watch for signs of those who are abused.
The Crown asked the judge to set parole eligibility at 20 years because of his history of domestic violence. His criminal record shows that he had pleaded guilty to violently beating Yawney less than a year before he killed her. His record also shows domestic disputes involving two of his previous girlfriends and one involving his mom. Today in court, Redwood's lawyer also talked about his history, saying that he's a First Nations man with a turbulent past and that he grew up in a home that was unstable, filled with drugs, alcohol, and abuse.
It's a tragic situation, there's no doubt. I mean, it's a bit trite to say that, but certainly I felt that Mr. Redwood was genuine in his perspective throughout this process. He was severely intoxicated and has no recollection of the event, and is genuinely remorseful for its occurrence.
The judge says that Redwood showed remorse, but he noted that Redwood did not call for help after beating Yawney in what the judge called was clearly a fit of rage. The judge says her injuries show that the beating was prolonged, and he says that Redwood blamed intoxication rather than admitting that rage. The judge called Yawney's death nothing short of tragic, and he reminded the court that just because Redwood will be eligible for parole in 15 years, that doesn't mean he's guaranteed. Kendall Latimer, CBC News, Regina.